It's draft week, Rube. We're almost there. It feels like this has been like a 2-year process in the last month, but we're almost there.
Yeah, it's amazing how it just seems to never get there. You just keep, speculating and talking about it and writing about it, and it's actually here. So it's going to be an exciting week. I can't wait to get started.
Yeah, and this is an even like shorter window of time too, because the Eagles went so long during the season, but it still feels like
You
it's
know, it's interesting. I've been doing a lot of research on old draft picks for a story, and the draft used to be before the season ended. It was like in December. And there was weird rules, like if you were drafted, you could go back to school for another year. You could, then there was different leagues, so guys could get drafted by two different leagues. And then, like in the '70s, the draft was just right after the season. It was before the Super Bowl. It was in the middle of January. So uh, obviously, they hadn't figured out the hype implications of having in April yet. So the league is certainly expert at spreading out all the good stuff in the offseason.
well, you nailed Van Buren in that 44 mock draft.
No, I actually nailed the Ebert Van Buren pick,
Oh, okay.
his older brother, a few years later.
Gotcha. This is the Eagle Eye Podcast. I didn't mention that yet. He's Reuben Frank. I'm Dave Zangaro. We have a lot to talk about today. It's our final push before the draft begins on Thursday evening. So it's our last chance to kind of tell you what we think might happen and handicap it for you as best as we can. We'll look back at the first round draft picks under Howie Roseman and his success. And there's some failures in there as well. And this is also our first podcast since the Jalen Hurts press conference on Monday, the celebratory press conference. Everyone kind of takes a little victory lap after that contract gets signed. But there was some interesting stuff that came out of it. So we'll talk about that a little bit as well. Rube, my final mock draft is on our site right now, NBCSportsPhiladelphia.com. It's an Eagles only mock draft. I ended up giving them 7 players with a trade in there. I wanted to get your take on it and see what you think, if you think it's realistic, if you think that this could be in play for the Birds. And look, we know mock drafts aren't right, but they're fun. They're kind of fun to play with possibilities, and we do a lot of them.
Let's take a look.
All right. So in the first round, I have them staying at 10. And look, I think a trade is very possible with that 10th pick. And if I had to pick what they're going to do, if it's a trade, I think trading up for Jalen Carter, if he falls in their range, makes a lot of sense. But if they can't get that done, I had them staying there and taking Paris Johnson Jr., the offensive tackle from Ohio State.
Yeah, I think a lot of people think he's the best offensive lineman in the draft, and it certainly would make a lot of sense. Lane's getting up there, and they don't really have anything behind the starters. It's funny because people like, well, they got to trade up, they got to trade down. You can't just make a trade. You need to find another team that wants to get where you are and has a reason to. And this year, I'm not sure that's going to be doable, and we'll see. But I mean, every team has different, evaluates players differently and has different needs. So that's why you get trades. But if they do end up sticking at 10, I think Paris Johnson makes a lot of sense. He's played guard and tackle. He's a versatile guy. He would be Lane's replacement ultimately, presumably, and he's a really solid player.
Yeah, they're in a nice spot right now because they don't have any super pressing needs, at least at positions where we think they would use that high of a pick. Like, yeah, you can say they need a safety and they need a linebacker, but they're not taking one at 10. So it's like at 10, they don't have any pressing needs at positions, which is kind of a nice thing to have.
Yeah, no question. And I think Howie would really try not to be influenced by that, but you're only human, and all things being equal, you're going to take that position of need. But there's the positions where they really, really need help, linebacker and safety. They're not taking one. So, and I think we've got to change the terminology of off-ball linebackers need to be linebackers and edge rushers need to be edge rushers. Like the whole notion of calling like a Hassan Reddick, like an edge rusher, a linebacker, they're edge rushers. I mean, we got we're kind of trending that way.
Trending. I'm there. I haven't. I mean, I think most people have made that. At least draft people have made that distinction for a while now. Now there are some cases where like Hassan Reddick was drafted as an off-ball linebacker and was stupidly played there for for a large portion of his rookie contract. But yeah, they're. I mean, they're different positions.
Yeah,
Completely. Yeah.
different positions. All right. So we got Paris Johnson in the first round.
Yeah. And then I had them trading out of their second pick from 30, moving back to 37 with the Seahawks. And I think the most logical situation here is that Hendon Hooker is available, the quarterback, and a team wants to move up to draft him. And then a team would probably overpay. I mean, we think back to Lamar Jackson in 2018 when the Eagles traded away from 32 and moved into the second round. They got a nice little haul there from the Ravens. I think they could do that with another team. The Seahawks are a really good option moving back to 37, but like the Titans, if they don't get their quarterback in the first round, makes some sense. There are a few teams that might be looking for a quarterback. So I had the Eagles trading back to 37, picking up a third round pick, number 83 overall, to do it, which is a little rich, but if a team's moving up to get a quarterback, sometimes they have to overpay. And in my mind, like if they have to throw in a 2024 pick, go ahead. You got a ton of them anyway, so you feel okay about that. And I had them taking Adetomiwa Adebawore from Northwestern.
Yeah, he's a freakish athlete. His numbers are crazy. I mean, so yeah, and just going back to what you were saying earlier, I think there's a much bigger chance they can trade out of 30 than out of 10. Either way, we'll see what happens there. But I'd be really surprised if they pick at number 30. But in any case, yeah, he's a really interesting guy, Northwestern guy. He's just a freak. He's an athletic freak. What did he ran like 4.48 at 270 pounds.
He's the first player ever to run a sub 4.5 at over 270 pounds. He was 282 at the combine.
That's insane. I mean, that's really
and he's raw. Like he's certainly raw, but I'd rather take a player who's raw in the second round than the first round. He has traits, man. The projection too is that he played on the edge of Northwestern. He's probably going to kick inside more often than not at the NFL level. So you're still trying to like figure out how does it all work. But remember when Howie was talking about getting guys with something special, like talent wise in their bodies? This guy has it.
Yeah. He's got a lot of, at that size, has a lot of pass rush ability. And yeah, you get this guy in the building and find a spot for him.
Yeah, and a little similar to Milton Williams in terms of like an athletic interior guy who can kick outside. But I mean, as much as we like Milton, like you're not drafting a player because you have Milton Williams.
Yeah, no doubt.
Second round, 62nd overall, late second round pick. It's the Eagles' own pick. Devin Achane from Texas A&M, running back. He's undersized, but he has so much speed, and he would be such an elusive weapon for the Eagles. And you just like think about how can you change the dynamic of the offense? You add speed to it. 4.32, but runs tougher than you'd expect for someone who's undersized and that fast.
Yeah, and what I like about him is he can catch the ball and make plays. And if this team's going to draft a running back anywhere in the first 2 days, it's going to have to be a guy that can catch the ball and make plays as a runner and a receiver. I just think this offense is going to function so much better with that weapon in the passing game, and he can do that. He's a good receiver. 4.32 is blazing, but yeah, he does. He runs between the tackles. Anybody who wants a running back from the state of Texas, there you go.
Yeah, if you can't get Bijan, I think some fans will be disappointed. But if they come back and get a Jahmyr Gibbs, or they get Achane or Charbonnet from UCLA, like there are other guys who would help this offense quite a bit. So I don't think it's like Bijan or bust in terms of running backs. I think there are other guys who you can get at a better value, honestly, who can still contribute early on.
And this kid, one thing I like about him, he's got very limited usage in college. So he had under 400 carries as a collegian. Kind of like, I mean, that was one thing you liked about Miles Sanders was, I mean, he was behind Saquon until that last year. So that's a plus when you're looking at investing in a running back. You don't want a guy with, 800 carries in college.
Yeah, and there are some other, like Tyjae Spears is another guy who I really like, but man, heavy usage, some injury history, and yeah, if you get that guy in day 3, like 6th round, you feel okay about it. But using a premium pick on a player like that is a tougher sell for me.
Yeah, no doubt.
And don't get visions of Donnell Pumphrey flashback. Like Donnell Pumphrey was undersized, but he didn't have any elite athletic traits. A-Chain does. I mean, A-Chain has elite speed, and you're not projecting him to do something completely different at the NFL level than he did at college. So you feel safer about it in that respect.
Yeah, it always comes back to Donnell Pumphrey. It's really a shame.
Well, in this case, like he's an undersized running back. I don't want people to have flashbacks.
And what is he, 5'8", 190? I think.
Yeah, like 188.
Okay. It's like 190.
Like 190, yeah.
All right.
3rd round, 83. So this is the pick they acquired with that trade back. Nick Herbig.
Herbie.
Edge player from Wisconsin. Little different build than his brother, Nate Herbig, who's the offensive guard, now with the Steelers, but former Eagle. Nick Herbig's interesting. Undersized, edge rusher, but pretty productive at Wisconsin and still seems to have some room to grow. He doesn't have the blazing speed like, everyone's thinking Nolan Smith, undersized edge rusher. Doesn't have that type of athleticism. Nolan Smith is an absolute freak show, and it's why he's going to go in the 1st round. But I like a guy like Little Herbie in the 3rd.
Little Herbie in the 3rd. I wonder if the two Herbies will do a podcast one day, like in 10 years. We'll podcast together. He was pretty productive at Wisconsin. Had double digit. I think he had 20 sacks the last couple of years. So they're going to address edge rusher at some point, maybe multiple times. And he's an impressive player.
The pre-existing 3rd round pick, 94 overall, Jordan Battle, safety from Alabama.
Alabama's other safety.
Yeah. Brian Branch is the guy who might go in the 1st round, who's more of a hybrid safety nickel. Battle is not going to like wow you with his athleticism, but he's smart. He's instinctive. To me, he's a plug and play. I think if they draft him in the 3rd round, he'd have a legitimate chance to start as a rookie because he has so much experience under his belt. And sometimes you're drafting for upside and sometimes you're not. And I think it really just depends on the player, the situation, the position. And he's a guy who I think just makes sense for the Eagles.
Yeah, he was productive, started a lot of games. One of the things Howie talked about the other day when we talked to him was there's so many older guys in this draft, and he's like 22, really young guy, a lot of football left to be played. And I think I'll be surprised if the Eagles take, we talked about this the other day, there's because of COVID, guys got an extra year. Some people got 2 extra years because they, if they redshirted. So you have guys in the draft who are like 24, 25. He's 22, and you feel a lot better with a guy like that. But it makes a lot of sense.
And then the 2 7th round picks, a little bit of a luxury pick here for me. Quarterback.
I like it.
Yeah, I like it too. Dorian Thompson-Robinson from UCLA. The Eagles are always going to be looking for a quarterback that makes sense, and he makes sense because he has a similar play style to Jalen Hurts, but he also has athletic tools. He's not a guy that you look at and think, well, he's never going to be able to develop. And you already developed Jalen Hurts. The thought of like using a 7th round pick and developing his backup, who's going to be a lot cheaper than Marcus Mariota in a year, that to me has some validity to it, if it's the right guy.
What does he have in common with Marcus Mariota?
Chip.
They both played for Chip in college. I watched a lot of UCLA games. It's like watching those West Coast games. Ever since Howie told us, nobody watches the Pac-10, Pac-12, whatever it is.
Yeah, you would have seen J-Jaw up close if you watched a few years ago.
That's right. That was right. He was underdrafted. Nobody really watches those games. It's probably not Howie's most perceptive quote. But in any case, I like the kid. I think he's got some talent. He's pretty accurate. There's some tools there to work with. Yeah,
I think so. I don't know if he'll be there in the 7th round, but who knows? Eventually, like the 7th round is who knows at that point. Then the last pick, Mohamed Diabate, I think I'm pronouncing his name correctly. Interesting. Former Gator, Florida Gator, went to Utah for last season. Has some edge rush history, but he's an off-ball linebacker. Good speed, good athleticism. And I didn't have them taking a linebacker before that. So I didn't want them to leave this draft without one. I think he would make a lot of sense.
6'3", 225. They seem to like small linebackers.
That's not really small anymore.
Yeah, you're probably right.
He's got length too. It's not like he's 5'11", 225.
True.
He can work with length.
Yeah. Yeah,
All
those are good names. They all make sense.
That was fun. I'll go 0 for 7 on draft night, and we'll pretend like that never happened. Okay.
Yeah, but
Deal?
at least I got Ebert Van Buren.
I have a list in front of me that we just came up with before we started recording this pod. Options for a trade up, staying at 10, and options for a trade down. And I feel pretty good about this list. Now, there are cases to be made. Obviously, if one of these trade up guys starts sliding and he's there at 10, you would take him. And there's a chance that they could take one of the trade down players that we have in this list at 10. I wouldn't be crazy, but I think we did a good job kind of putting these tiers together. You want to just go through the names here that we have on the list? All right. Yeah. So the 3 trade up candidates, at least when I looked at this, Jalen Carter, Will Anderson, and Tyree Wilson.
Yeah, and I think those are the only ones that he would move up from 10 for. It would be a defensive, an edge, or obviously an interior lineman. They're all big time impact defensive players who could, affect this defense in a big way for the next 6-8 years. So you would be happy with any of them. Which out of those 3, which one do you think is most likely?
Jalen Carter.
Yeah, I could really see that happening.
Yeah, because there's a legitimate reason why he would slip, and if he's not right for another team, and he is right for the Eagles in terms of off the field stuff, then you pull the trigger. I wouldn't hesitate. I think he's that special of a player. I would not hesitate to trade up for him.
Yeah, I wouldn't either. I don't think Howie would either. Listening to Howie talk on the Kelsey podcast about him specifically, but just in general about players who had a small single incident in college. And again, I don't know his whole history, his whole background. I haven't done the research, but Howie's talking about, if somebody was scouting me at Florida, like all the things I did. I mean, his whole, like, what did he do? Like, he jaywalked once, but what's the worst thing Howie did at Florida? But he seems to really be like, everyone else can leave him if they have, concerns about his character. We'll take him. I don't think he would hesitate.
Yeah, and certainly if Jalen Carter made it to 10,
he would.
You run the card up there. I don't think that'll happen. But if you're in a situation where he gets past the Seahawks at 5, then I think there's a chance he's in your range and you can go up and get him. And what would you have to give up? It's not cheap to move up in the top 10. It doesn't happen all that often, but if he's there, I think it's worth it.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. And then the other 2, it seems like there's a lot of smoke to Tyree Wilson going 3 to the Cardinals. So maybe that pushes Will Anderson down. I don't think he would last very long. I don't think he'd last long enough to get in the Eagles range.
Yeah, that's fair.
Are you with me on Carter being the most likely?
Yeah, big time.
Yeah. He seems like there are a lot of edge rushers every year. There are a lot of edge rushers. They don't all pan out, but there's like a big group of edge rushers who, at least at the college level, get after the quarterback. The list is always shorter at defensive tackle. It's a harder spot to fill. There aren't as many guys getting after the quarterback inside.
And that's a great point. And the more edge rushers there are up high, that means they're going to push good players down into the bottom of the first and the top of the second.
Yeah. All right. So I have my stay at 10 options. I'll go by position here. I have 2 offensive linemen on this list, Paris Johnson Jr., who we already mentioned, from Ohio State, and Peter Skoronski, the offensive lineman from Northwestern, played left tackle. at Northwestern. A lot of evaluators think he's a guard at the NFL level. We talked about Johnson. What do you make of Skoronski?
Yeah, like you said, I think he could probably give you reps at tackle. He might be but he's a guard from everything I've read. He's a guard in the NFL. He's a really solid guy. I mean, I really like Paris Johnson. He would be my top choice out of that, out of those guys. But people really like Skoronski. Of course, I was born in Columbus. I got Buckeye in my blood, so I was, by the way, my 2024 mock draft, there could be like 9 Ohio State guys in next year's first round. It's unbelievable.
I have an all right program there.
Yeah, pretty good one going.
Yeah.
But, I mean, without knowing what the Eagles are thinking, I think either one of those guys is certainly wouldn't surprise you if they went that way. They haven't taken all that many offensive tackles. Like we always talk about linemen in the first round, but mainly defensive linemen.
Yeah, really. I mean, it's who is Dillard, Fireman, Lane.
Yeah, and that's it.
That's
right?
it.
Yeah.
A lot of second round picks. They've used 2 of their last second round picks on offensive line.
And Sean Andrews wasn't Howie, but since 2000, Trey was 98. I mean, they had Trey and Runyon for 10 years. So,
and then they had JP, who they got in a trade. They have Lane. So you have like these bookend tackles. So it makes sense to not draft them super high.
Yeah, no, it does.
And unlike defensive linemen who you're going to play.
Right.
Yeah.
Sean Andrews was drafted he started out as guard, but I mean, he was going to be a tackle. He just never got to that point, unfortunately.
Yeah. Skoronski's interesting because the whole reason people think he's a guard only is because of his short arms. And that does matter. I'd kind of like to see a team draft him as a tackle and play him there. I'm just curious to see how it would work, because if he's a guard only, like there aren't many guards to go in the top 10. And there's a reason for that. It's just not as premium of a position. And look, his ceiling is like all pro guard. And that'd be great if you get that, but there's no guarantee it works out that way. And then like, if you have to use a top 10 pick and you get an average tackle, you're like, okay, that's okay. If you get an average guard, then it wasn't worth the pick.
Fair.
Yeah. 2 corners who I think could be in that range: Christian Gonzalez and Devin Witherspoon. I think we differ on this. I think you like Witherspoon more. I like Gonzalez more. Is that accurate?
They're pretty close, though. I mean, probably a little bit more, but I mean, I don't think you can go wrong with either one.
I like watching Witherspoon more.
Yeah.
I think Gonzalez is the better player. I like the length. I like the athleticism. I think he probably has a higher ceiling.
Probably true.
Yeah.
But I like Witherspoon.
And look, we haven't talked a lot about corner as much since the Eagles made their offseason moves. But, I mean, they have 2 starting cornerbacks who are over 30. That's, if you're looking at this team and like what could go wrong pretty quickly, that's one area where, all right, I mean, that's something you might want to fix or at least have a backup plan for.
But, they gave each of them a contract and committing for 2 years, most likely, both of them. So how does that affect your thinking there?
Yeah, my thinking is more of like, are these guys going to stay healthy as opposed to are these guys going to decline?
Yeah. I mean, there's 2 different things. Like they've both been pretty durable, like throughout their careers. They haven't missed many games, but there's a difference between being injury prone and just declining skill level. So,
yeah, I mean, well, based on their contracts, though, like you're not going to bench them.
No.
But there's the injury possibility.
Yeah, I'd probably be a little less likely to take a corner at 10, having given those guys those contracts.
Okay. I don't know if that's good team building.
That's how I would draft.
Okay. But no hesitation with Lane under contract to take a tackle?
Because
it's like kind of a similar. Lane has 2 years left? Real functional
2 years left. He's older.
I guess you can say it's a more premium position, a position they care about.
Yeah, and I mean, it's a fair question. Lane's had some injuries.
Definitely has.
Yeah, maybe it's harder to find that elite tackle.
Yeah, and typically, like when you find the elite tackles, you find them high up in the draft.
Yeah,
There are busts there, but
yeah, we'll
that's fair.
get to that.
Yeah, in a little bit. Edge player, it's a position they care about. It's a position they might draft. I don't know if it lines up value wise necessarily. The only guy I have here is Nolan Smith, and 10 might be too rich for Nolan Smith, but I know they value the position. I think they value that skill set, and he's an athletic freak.
They might really like him at 10. I think there's a chance. He strikes me as a Howie, a guy that Howie would really really like, just because he's kind of a unique player and has traits out the wazoo, and he's productive, and he played at Georgia. He's got like all the all the elements you need. That one wouldn't surprise me.
And then the last name I have here, and this would be a little surprising given what they already have at the position, but I think like value wise, it would line up is Jackson Smith and Jigba, another Ohio State guy. I think that would be a little surprising because you'd have to figure out target share, but it's a position they care about, and I think the value lines up.
Yeah, the value does line up. It'd be really interesting if all these guys are available, which they won't be there. But I'd really like to see what they do, and I don't think he would go that direction. I wouldn't mind it. I honestly would not mind it. He's really, really good.
He's very good. To me, he's the best receiver in the class.
Why not get Jalen another weapon?
Yeah, because you got to figure out how to get them all the ball, and you already have a top receiver who will voice his displeasure when he doesn't get the football, and you've already paid him. You're going to have to pay Devontae in another year.
Yeah, but when I hear both Ohio State receivers that were drafted high up last year say that this guy's better than either of them.
Yeah. We do that every year with Ohio State receivers now because next year it's Marvin Harrison Jr.
Yeah. Yeah, he might be better than all of them. He's unreal, but this kid is special. And I mean, I think he can figure out. I mean, there's been teams that have had 3 elite wide receivers before. I think it's more of a plus. How do you cover these guys? And AJ might find himself more open. Depending on how teams decide to cover these guys, and who's lining up where, he might find himself open more than he did last year. So I just don't see how it can be a bad thing to add an elite weapon like him.
Okay, yeah, I get that. I think there are other options. To me, they're a little more enticing, but he's a good player. So
really good player.
All right, trade down options. This first one's going to be unpopular because people are going to be like, why is he not stay at 10? But Bijan Robinson, and this is kind of given what we know about how the Eagles value positions. I don't think they take him at 10. If they could maybe get some extra value, maybe it becomes a little bit more reasonable.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Somebody might snag him. They might not have that chance. They might not have that opportunity, but if you could get an asset and get out of 10 and still get him, I'd love to see it.
Okay.
It's just a matter of where, like how, because someone's going to take him, like at some point.
Yeah, he'll be a first round pick.
Well, yeah, but I mean, I think it'll be by like 17, he'll be gone. I think.
I don't think that's guaranteed.
Okay, we'll see. I think somebody will take him by 17, 18. So, how far do you want to, go down? I mean, we'll see. But I think the value is there. I mean, depending what you get in the trade, but I think the value is there to take him in the middle of the round.
Interesting. I have a couple edge rushers on this trade down list. Miles Murphy from Clemson, Lucas Van Ness from Iowa. Murphy's kind of become like a forgotten guy in this draft. I think he feels like a, hit it down the fairway, safe pick, big bodied guy, can set the edge, gives you some pass rush upside. Pretty young still just 21. I like Miles Murphy, maybe more than most people.
What do you like about him?
Like the typical size, length. I like length in an edge rusher. Uh, I think he's just a solid player. I don't think he doesn't have like one elite trait. Like you look at Nolan Smith and he has just pure speed
Yeah,
off the edge. Like Miles Murphy is not going to wow you with any one thing. I just think he's a really good player who's going to be in the league for a decade.
that's fair. I guess, and I think that's probably. I mean, teams are looking for the guys with those elite traits, and I'm not sure he has them, but he is solid.
Yeah. And Van Ness, I mean, he's a guy with really good traits who is very raw. I mean, very raw.
Yeah.
And there's been a lot of buzz about the Eagles taking him at 10, him maybe going in the top 10. Don't love that, honestly.
Yeah, he's all over the place, and you see different projections. That seems too high for him, but you get him later in the round, I'd be okay with that.
Yeah, and so much of what he did in college was like rushing inside and shooting gaps, and I think he probably just needs to play at the edge a little bit more at the NFL level. So certainly tools though, like he has ability, and if you trust your coaching staff, which sometimes teams kind of overvalue their coaching staff, to be honest with you, and they think like, yeah, we'll get the most out of this guy. But that said, I do have a lot of faith in Jeremiah Washburn, who is their coach at the edge.
It's a position where they don't have that immediate need. Like I mean, you got BG for another year, you got Reddick, you got Sweat, so he can come in and he can learn from those guys, and you don't have to rely on them to play 50 snaps a game.
Next to offensive tackles, Broderick Jones from Georgia, Darnell Wright from Tennessee. I think 10's a little rich for both of them, but if you were to trade down into the mid to late teens, then yeah, sure. Especially if they end up liking one of those guys more than Skoronski or Paris Johnson, and they can kind of see the way the board's going, then you get some extra value.
Yeah. Yeah, I think those are I see those guys as being like in that 20 range, which might be doable.
I think we might see a little run on tackles.
Yeah.
In the teens, yeah. I do. Because I think there's some good ones, and I think there's a drop-off after these guys. Okay. A couple corners, Joey Porter Jr. and Deontay Banks, who I think has put himself in that firmly at the top of that next group with Porter, who, to be honest with you, I just don't like Porter anywhere near as much as Gonzalez and Witherspoon.
I really like Banks. He was one of my. Well, are we allowed to mention our? I won't mention our. But I was kind of just looking at him in the last few days. He's a really interesting guy. I kind of like to see more of him.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. And then the last two names here, two defensive tackles.
By the way, speaking of Joey Porter Jr., do you know the Eagles have only drafted one defensive player out of Penn State ever?
Sharif
Miller played all two
fourth
snaps.
Round pick, late fourth round pick.
He
was like one of the last picks in the fourth round, I believe.
Never played on defense. Played two snaps on special teams.
Did fight Casey Tucker in training camp.
How do you remember that?
I don't know.
That was probably one of your observations, I'm sure.
Defensive tackle, last two here, Brian Brzee from Clemson and Kalijah Cansey. I always want to say Clancy. Kalijah Cansey from Pitt.
Yeah, Cansey's he's like the darling of the first round lately. I mean, he's kind of come out of nowhere and everyone loves him all of a sudden. I don't know if that's a real thing or if that's just perception.
I think he's a late first round pick.
Yeah, but I don't think that was the case a month ago.
Yeah, and everyone's going to compare him to Aaron Donald, which is just you're dooming the kid.
Not fair.
I think but there have been other undersized tackles who've gotten compared to Aaron Donald, like Ed Oliver a few years ago. I think he's in that vein. There are some tools there, but yeah, I wouldn't take him 10.
Who do you think out of that group that we just went through is they're most likely to trade down for?
One of the edge.
I think
Players.
Van Ness or Banks.
Yeah, I
Right.
was Van Ness or Murphy. I think one of the edge players.
Yeah.
All right. That's fun.
Yeah.
All right. Catch all the sports action and more at Rivers Casino, Philadelphia. Whether it's the money line or the pass line, there's something for everyone in a great sports book. Rivers Casino, Philadelphia. Philly loves a winner. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Rube, we'll get back to some draft stuff a little bit later. We have our best and worst first-round picks, but Jalen Hurts had his celebratory press conference on Monday, a sharp green suit. Came down with Jeff Lurie, Howie Roseman, Nick Sirianni was there, a few offensive coaches, his agent, Nicole Lynn, a few of his teammates snuck in the back of the room, his girlfriend in the front row there. It was an opportunity for the organization to give itself a little pat on the back.
Yeah, that was really nice for Jalen to give $100 bills to all the beat writers. That was a nice gesture.
I have yours. I'll give it to you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was an unusual vibe, and I mean, I wasn't there. I couldn't go that day. Whatever was that yesterday?
Monday.
You know when it was. That was yesterday.
Monday. Yeah.
But it was. I watched the whole thing, and yeah, it was just like a love fest in there. You know, you see, it just struck me how. I mean, you see the owner giving a big like bro hug to the quarterback. You just don't see that kind of stuff, you know. And I think one of the more striking things to me was just how, you know, in baseball, they talk about being strong up the middle, and that's how you build a team. And you think about quarterback, GM, owner, and head coach. And I mean, the owner is as good as any owner that we've seen, best owner in Eagles history, one of the best owners, probably in NFL history. The head coach got to the Super Bowl his second year. The quarterback got to the Super Bowl his second year as a starter. And the GM is executive of the year, like they're going to retire it in his name. So in the foremost important like positions in the franchise, they're really in great shape, and they all work together. They all like each other. They all respect each other. They're all productive together. I think I left watching that just thinking that the franchise is in really, really good shape for the long term with the right people in the right spots.
And that was something Jeffrey Lurie mentioned in his opening statement, was having, you know, those three positions. He didn't include himself in that, but he said the three positions, and he was talking about head coach, GM, and quarterback, and he said they feel pretty good about all three of those, and I think they should.
Yeah, if I was the owner, I would include myself. Like, come on, what owner has done what I've done? But it's true. He you know, for the longest time, Jeff Lurie was not a popular guy here. He just wasn't a popular owner, but he's really just like Howie. I mean, really all four of them, you know, kind of started out not so great. People wanted to fire all of them. Not fire Jalen, but certainly didn't like the pick. So they all have that in common, which is interesting. It could be a column.
Sometimes I watch you come up with column ideas, and I'm waiting for, like, I'll get a Slack message later. Hey, I got an idea. Wonder how you came up with that one.
Yeah, that's what the podcast has really become a what's the word, a
idea factory.
Yeah, that was tank. Yeah, those weren't the phrases I was thinking of, but that's basically, yeah, it's become a place where we can kind of bounce ideas off each other and say, oh, I can write that.
That's because there's not as much prep. We're just letting it flow a little bit.
No doubt. But yeah, that was what was your biggest takeaway from that?
Yeah, that was a good one. I thought, you know, Jalen clearly went up. He was uncomfortable a little bit talking about any of the money aspect of it.
He even said he had mixed feelings about the contract.
Him saying he had mixed emotions.
Mixed emotions, yeah.
Mixed emotions about signing a $255 million contract. Look, I think part of it is calculated. He wants people to think of him in a certain way, but I don't think that doesn't mean it's genuine. You know what I mean? Or it's not genuine. I think it is genuine. I think he cares about the work. And That's a really good start. Jeffrey Lurie talked about culture setters, and Jalen's a great example of that. The work ethic stuff, it can become like you get tired of hearing about it, like first in, last to leave, all that stuff. But yeah, like it matters, and he does put in the work. And I think that's the reason why when we asked Nick and Howie about the worry when you give someone money that it could change them, I think that's why they're not worried about it, is because he just is who he is and he cares about the process so much. And I thought it was telling that on this day set up to celebrate him becoming worth $250 million, all he wanted to talk about was like working and working out, and that matters. And I think he's like setting the example for his teammates, a few of who were sitting in the back of the room.
Yeah, no question. And he might be the only person in the NFL or in organized sports who can say, I have mixed feelings about getting $250 million. And it comes across genuine.
Yeah. Well, he said it and then he realized how it sounded. And he's like,
yeah.
well, look,
yeah,
but we all got what he was.
I don't think it was disingenuous. I think he really, part of him really like feels like I want to, I just got to make sure this money doesn't, define who I am. I don't want anything to change.
I think he had mixed feelings about like the celebratory nature of what we were doing there on Monday. I don't think anyone has mixed feelings about getting a $30 million check when you sign a piece of paper.
I did. Culture setter. Jeff used that phrase like a lot. It's interesting. Another thing, just he really, he wasn't even asked this, but he just took the time to mention how much he loves being in Philadelphia.
He was asked it.
Oh, was he asked it?
Yeah.
Was that your question? I'm sorry.
Well, my first question was about like it, because he mentioned in his statement not just leading the team but leading the city, and yeah. I thought that was an interesting way for him to phrase it, because like people in the city don't play for the Eagles, but the team is so ingrained in what the city is that like I thought it was a fitting way for him to say it.
Yeah, and I guess that's what I was thinking. But that's a unique thing for a player to say, and really struck me. I mean, it's no secret Carson never. I mean, he had some great games. He had a great season in 2017, but I never felt like he, really embraced the city. Certainly, Donovan didn't, for whatever reason. Randall kind of did, but that was a long time ago. I just think it matters. I just think, it's a lot easier to. I mean, you just want a guy that wants to be here. It's like that's not too much to ask. And he was so strong about it. He said, "I never want to play anywhere else. This is where I want to be." He said, "I don't think I would have had the success I've had if I wasn't in this city." It was really strong stuff. This city has helped make me who I am. I mean, I'm paraphrasing, but it was pretty strong stuff. And again, I thought it came across really genuine. I think he really loves it here.
Yeah, no, I think that is definitely accurate. I'm trying to find the one quote here. I couldn't do it. Like he was talking about growing into the man he is today, and he said, like, I couldn't do it in another place, and I couldn't imagine it being another way. It is kind of crazy. Like this wasn't the plan. They didn't draft Jalen to be a $255 million quarterback. It turned out that way, and sometimes it's better to be lucky than good. And I'm not saying they were completely lucky. They evaluated the player. They saw something special. They're willing to draft him. He called it. He said that they had the courage to draft him. Yeah, and all that's true. And look, I know people hear us talk about Jalen and they think, well, all that matters is how he plays. And sure, like if he didn't play well, he wouldn't get this contract. We wouldn't be talking about him in this way. The play is ultimately what matters. But when you combine the play with what he is in the locker room, off the field, like then you get into this territory where you think, I mean, he could go down as one of the all-time greats in this franchise and really like one of the most beloved players in this franchise, and which is a pretty storied franchise.
He's tell me about it. I've written those stories, most of them. I think he's already well on his way there. I mean, there hasn't been a lot of, there's been 3 quarterbacks that have led this team to a Super Bowl. And, Jaws did it. Nick did it. And those guys are, I'm not
Nick
sure.
/ Carson.
Nick / Carson.
I want to give the due where it's, credit.
Yeah, more Nick. Carson he set the table. But yeah, I mean, look,
won 13 games.
No, I know. No, he didn't.
No, they won 13 games. I'm saying in large part because of him.
Yeah, he was a big part of it, but he's also not a legend, and Nick is, because Nick finished it. That's all I'm saying. But he's in a very small group of quarterbacks that have, led this team to the final game. Norm Van Brocklin, Tommy Thompson, my guy. I was just texting with Tommy. But I think he's well on his way there. There's no doubt in my mind Jalen Hurts is going to play in another Super Bowl, if not multiple more Super Bowls. And part of that is how talented he is, what they've built around him, and part of that's just the landscape of the NFC, and that's going to change. At some point they'll find some more good quarterbacks in the conference, but right now, I mean, and we'll see what the 49ers do. I think Purdy has a chance to be pretty good, but
pretty good.
Pretty good. That was not intentional. But right now, the landscape of the conference is, it's Jalen and it's everyone else.
And now Aaron Rodgers is officially out of the conference.
Yeah, all the NFC quarterbacks that have won. I mean, Matt Ryan retired. I mean, it's just, Aaron Rodgers is a Jet officially now. All the Super Bowl quarterbacks. Foles is, I guess, still with the Colts.
Russ is in Denver.
Yeah, Garoppolo is with the Raiders. They're all NFC Super Bowl quarterbacks are now in the AFC. The only quarterbacks in the NFC, even Flacco's in the AFC. So even the only Super Bowl quarterbacks in the NFC are Goff, Stafford, and Jalen. I'll take Jalen out of that group.
You think so?
Yeah. And Stafford's been a really good player, but and at times a great player, but he's also, how old is Stafford? I mean, he's up there, right?
I don't know. Can you throw a football right now?
And I like Goff, but he's no Jalen. So anyway, we're a little off topic, but you get that sense that when all said and done, Jalen Hurts, he'll be the greatest quarterback in Eagles history.
Yeah, very possible.
Stafford's 35, according to our ace producer, Ben Berry.
Yeah, he's 35 and not healthy. And
that's the other thing about Jalen. He's 24, and you listen to him talk and just how wise he is, how thoughtful. He's very guarded, but it's like listening to a guy who's been in the league for 10 years. I mean, he's really got a wisdom about him, a maturity, and we talk about that all the time. But I thought on Monday it was really evident just how, I guess, advanced he is in those areas. You know
what he has down pat? The dramatic pause.
Yeah, he really does.
I mean, he can nail a dramatic pause as good as anyone.
You know what the greatest dramatic pause ever is? I know I don't really go pop culture very often on the pod.
I'm excited.
But I was watching one of the Raiders of the Lost Ark movies. I think it was The Empire Strikes Back. No, I'm just kidding. I forget which one it was. But, they're Indiana Jones, they have all the grails and the guy picks the wrong one and drinks from it and, explodes and dies and everything. And the guy says, "You've chosen poorly." It's tremendous. It's my favorite scene.
Yeah. And sometimes Jalen will combine the pause with repeating something for emphasis.
He does that a lot.
It's like, we need to continue to rise.
Continue
to rise. So he'll nail that.
I think he uses that kind of. I think sometimes he repeats stuff as a way to kind of collect his thoughts for the next thing he wants to say. But he does that a lot. Yeah. And look, nothing wrong with repetitive structure. It's an effective means of communication.
It is.
It is.
Yeah, and look, I see some people are like getting irritated about the lavish praise for Jalen in between not playing any football games, but like he kind of deserves his due right now. He came. No one's improved year over year more than Jalen from 2021 to 2022, and there's a lot of faith from the organization that he won't regress back to somewhere in between that. They think he's going to. Obviously, the contract shows that they think he's going to continue to play at a certain level. And look, even like this time last year, we were talking about like Deshaun Watson and Russell Wilson, like, and there was some legitimate smoke there. I don't think the Eagles were sold on him, but the fact that we went from that to then a year later, them having this press conference, and the contract is obviously what matters. The actions matter, but to go through that whole performance on Monday, it tells you what they think of him.
Yeah, and I'm really curious to see where he goes from here in his contract and in his career. I'm sorry, and just there's a chance he's not going to get a whole lot better. I don't know how much better he can get. I know he'll max out whatever his ability is. And he could. I mean, he could get significantly better. It's going to be fun to watch.
Don't even need him to, honestly. He plays like he did last year. Take it.
Yeah, just right where you are. Just stay there.
All right, let's do this. Best and worst first round picks.
What do you want to do first?
Under Howie Roseman. We'll do best. We'll save the worst for last. That seems to be the way we do everything here.
So, yeah, I got a couple of tweets on this, like, how come you didn't mention Victor Abiamiri last time? This is since Howie became GM, which is 2010 minus 2015, which was Chip's year's GM.
Yeah, so in this, when we get to the first round, that means no Nelson Aguilar. That was Chip's pick in 2015. So,
and he's a tough one to classify. So
yeah, I'm glad he's out of this because I wouldn't know where to put him.
Yeah, I was going to ask you that when we're done, but we'll
okay.
All right.
All right. Let's start with the best. Who do you have the number one?
I went back and forth between Lane and Fletch. Mm-hmm. I went Lane.
I went Fletcher. Interesting.
You can certainly make that case. I just, I just think Lane started out, with a couple suspensions early in his career, but I really believe he's, and then I believe he's the best right tackle in football, maybe the best offensive tackle in football. I'm not sure Fletch, if he was that, it was for a shorter period of time. Both great picks, a year apart, but I'm giving Lane the edge.
I understand that. Now, if the Eagles had the first pick and they chose, I think they would have taken Lane anyway. But the decision was made for them in a way because Fisher and Jokel came off the board before him. So it was like, yeah, you get Lane. I think they would have taken Lane anyway. And if they would have done that, then I think it would have made the pick look much better. They got Fletcher at 12.
Yeah.
I mean, all-time great player in an Eagles uniform. They got him at 12. I think he's probably – those suspensions hurt Lane. He's missed time for injuries. And, 14 games in your first 4 seasons that you miss for suspensions a lot.
Yeah.
It's almost a full season. So, but we're nitpicking because they're two all-time great players.
Yeah, and I think Lane's Hall of Fame chances are real. He needs at least one more All-Pro to be in the mix, but he's been so good. I think we talked about this out in Arizona. I think the notoriety he got for playing with that core muscle injury in a Super Bowl in the last, in the playoffs, gave him publicity he had never gotten on a national scale. It really put him on the map and then people saw how well he was playing with the injury in the Super Bowl.
Have his Hall of Fame odds passed Fletcher's?
I think so.
Interesting.
I mean, Lane's later career is better.
I agree.
Yeah. Now, I haven't seen any drop off in Lane, but we have seen it in Fletch. I think he's still a functional player, but Lane's still at the top of it. And for me, that was really the difference when I looked at their careers.
I get that. Clear top two though. No way anyone else is breaking in that top two. Who'd you have at number 3?
This was tough.
It was tough. Want me to give it first?
Yeah.
I went BG.
I have 4th.
Okay, longevity won out here for me. Because the first few years weren't great. And we know we don't have to go through the whole history, but the fact that he's been here for a decade, and I look now, like when they have this 10th overall pick, it's like they want to get a player who's going to be here for a decade and who can be a cornerstone. And that's what BG ended up becoming. It took a long time to get there, but hard to argue with the end results.
Absolutely. I went with Devontae. I just, what did he catch? 90 some odd balls in his what he's done his first 2 years. No other Eagles receivers ever done that. It's a hard comparison. BG, who's been here and played really well the last 5-6 years, versus a guy who's been here 2 years and played great.
Yeah.
It's really apples and oranges, but I just think Devontae is a really special player, and he was just so good this year. He was so good in the postseason. Great teammate, and BG's all those things too. And BG made one of the biggest plays in Eagles history. Certainly, the strip sack. I don't have to explain what play it was, I guess. But
who was the quarterback on that other team?
I think it was Drew.
Is that Matt Castle?
I think it was Drew Bledsoe. I remember. That was a tough one. Did you have Devontae 4th?
I had Devontae 5th.
Yeah,
and he's going to move up this list pretty quickly.
Yeah,
I had Carson at 4.
Yeah, I have Carson 5.
He's a look. It's really tough to figure out. Now, the reason let me explain my Carson pick at 4. Picking Devontae was pretty easy. Heisman Trophy winner. Sure, they trade up to get him, but makes sense right down the middle. How aggressive they were to get Carson, to me, makes it a better pick. They identified the quarterback. They were aggressive. They moved up. They drafted him, and he was really good. He was an MVP level player in their second year, and they don't win a Super Bowl without him. So I still have him at 4. I think Devontae's going to pass him very shortly.
Like opening day. I'm going to ask you every week, has he passed him yet? I couldn't put Carson any higher than 5th just because of the way it ended.
It's fair.
And I think it was how he brought a lot of that on himself. So talented. And you can't take 2017 away from him. He was incredible. It was the best stretch of any quarterback in Eagles history, even with Jalen last year.
And I don't want to minimize some of the play he had in 18 and 19 either.
Yeah.
Like we always talk about 2017, and that was obviously the peak of it. But I mean, he won the last 4 games of 2019, willed them into the playoffs.
He did with Deontay, what was his name? Burnett and Robert Davis and
Big Rob and
Greg Ward. Who was the other receiver in that group? But look, absolutely. And I was a huge Carson guy for a long time, but the way it ended, to me, is a big part of the equation with him. And to have that much ability and let it, and to be defined by, and look, he's still only 30, it's like he hasn't been good in a few years. The way he handled 2020, I was really disappointed in him. The way he handled the offseason, everything, just the way it ended, I couldn't put him higher than 5th.
I get that. All right. Let's go to worst. Number 1.
And what does this say about this list when Jalen Reagor's not first or second on this list?
Yeah, he's not. I thought because we've talked about this before, and I thought, let me reevaluate and see if Jalen Reagor can pass. And no, he didn't. It's pretty clear. It's Danny Watkins 1, Marcus Smith 2.
No, I went Marcus Smith 1.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah. I went Marcus Smith 1, Fireman Danny 2, just because, at least, I don't even know why. Marcus Smith And I know he's been really public about his mental health issues that he was facing when he got here. And I want to be sensitive to that. But I mean, he's one of the worst players I've ever seen. And
He wanted to play football.
There was just nothing there. Fireman Danny did not want to play football.
He was a 26-year-old man who didn't want to play football.
I understand that. Marcus Smith didn't do anything. I don't know. You can go either way. I get putting Fireman Danny first, and I respect that. I almost admire it. But I had to go Marcus Smith first. I couldn't. And look, Fireman Danny was, I mean, he was an embarrassment. He was a jerk. That doesn't really play into it. But we'll always look back at that draft, 2011 draft, and it's funny because like if they took Kelsey in the first round, becomes a Hall of Fame center, and they took Fireman Danny in the 6th round, oh, that's a great draft. It's like you flip flop. It was like, oh, that was a terrible draft. It's like if you get the player, you get the player.
Yeah.
It's a funny way to look at it. But anyway, I got to go Marcus Smith one.
Interesting. I really thought we were going to be agreeing there, but either way, those are the same as Fletcher and Lane at the good list. Danny and Marcus Smith, they're clearly 1 and 2 in either order, and then Jalen Reagor 3.
Yeah, that's the easy one.
Yeah, what did you do 4 or 5?
And we were just talking about this back in the green room. Howie's only drafted 11 first-round picks, so there's only one guy who's not on either list. I assume we both have Jordan Davis.
Yeah, it's just incomplete right now.
Yeah, as that middle guy. I went Dillard 4th, and then Barnett 5th.
Yeah, same with me.
Yeah, I mean Barnett has. Look, he's started a bunch of games. He started like 50 games or something for this team, and he's been disappointing. But Dillard never became a starter. Not entirely his fault. Who knew Jordan Mailata was going to be as good as he is? But Dillard had opportunities to win that job and win the right tackle job, or at least play right tackle, and he didn't take advantage of him. I do think he'll play well. I think he's grown up a lot. I think he's no, we'll see. We'll see how he does down there. But Barnett has been disappointing, but Dillard he just never amounted to anything here.
Yeah, he never. I mean, at least Barnett contributed.
Yeah,
during his time here, which technically isn't over. So we'll see if he's back. He's under contract, so we'll see if he's playing here next year. But he's at least contributed, whereas Dillard, and maybe it's a little bit of a function of the position too, because even when Barnett wasn't a starter, he was going to play because he plays a position where they rotate, and obviously you're not doing that at offensive tackle. But that seems pretty clear to me.
I don't know. A lot of people, I don't know. Barnett showed up on some free agent lists when free agency started in March, but he's under contract for another year. So I get a lot of tweets about that.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah. No, he's under contract. We'll see if he's here.
Right.
Yeah. There's an option where they could cut him. They can't really cut him now, based on the structure of the contract, but they could cut him post June 1st and make that work.
Yeah, but I don't know if there's a reason not to bring him to camp.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe
depends what they draft too.
Yeah, you draft an edge player with that 10th pick.
Yeah.
Then he's like, well, I'm the 5th edge rusher. Like, I'd rather go somewhere else.
Yeah.
Yeah. Before we wrap this up, give me a prediction for Thursday night. If you had to pick one player that you think the Eagles are going to walk away from the round with, who would you pick?
Well, I would take Jalen Carter, but I have a feeling you will. So
I'm going to say the guy I put in the mock draft.
Oh, okay. I'm going to go Jalen Carter then.
He seems like their kind of guy.
Yeah, he really does.
It makes sense. And even in my mock draft, I mentioned that Paris Johnson is the guy I'm going to pick here, but that was dependent on them not being able to trade up and get Jalen Carter, because I think that is That is the move to me that makes the most sense.
Yeah, but I still think there's like a 5% chance they'll take Bijan.
You're at 5. You've
Yeah.
really fluctuated here with this Bijan.
I just kind of, we like to zig when everyone else zags. That sticks with me.
That's really zigging.
Yeah. It's fun to think about. Well, we'll see where he ends up, what kind of player he becomes, but whatever happens, Thursday's going to be a blast. And by the way, we should mention we're going to have pods each night of the draft.
Yeah. Each early morning of the next day after the draft, because it is such a late night. But
that's true. But when you wake up, they'll be there. And if you want to stay up late, they'll be there. And it's going to be a fun few days.
Should be. All right. If you enjoy the Eagle Eye podcast, please rate and subscribe wherever you get your pods. If you're watching on YouTube, please click the like button, subscribe there as well. That's it. Everyone enjoy the first round of the draft. We'll talk to you after it. For Reuben, I'm Dave. This has been Eagle Eye.